Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tearing into a PDF report that honestly reads less like a dry maritime document and way more like the script for a disaster movie. We're talking about the absolute life-or-death stakes of maritime safety equipment. When you are hundreds of miles offshore getting battered by a storm, the metal, the pumps, and the engines around you are literally the only things keeping you from the abyss. You trust that they work. But what if that trust is completely misplaced?
I want you to really think about this for a second. What actually happens when a ship's safety systems fail right when you need them most? You know as well as I do, there are no second chances at sea. If a fire breaks out, you can't exactly call the local fire department. If you take on water, you can't just pull over to the side of the road. In a crisis, the crew relies entirely on emergency systems. But a shocking new look at recent maritime data reveals that on way too many vessels, these critical lifelines are already broken long before the alarm ever sounds.
As always, we brought the receipts. We are diving straight into the Australian Maritime Safety Authority's March 2026 report. This document summarizes the top deficiencies found on ships over the last 3 years, and the data here is absolutely staggering. AMSA inspectors have flagged severe, recurring breakdowns across 7 critical categories of shipboard equipment. We are talking about the fundamental systems required to keep a vessel afloat, fight fires, and abandon ship if all else fails.
Okay, let's run through our agenda real quick so we can make sense of this massive report. We're going to break this down into structural and watertight risks, fire and power failures, failing life-saving appliances, and finally, we'll uncover the systemic root cause tying it all together.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Structural and Watertight Risks of Vessels' Physical Deterioration. This is all about the sheer, undeniable physical decay that compromises a ship's basic ability to just stay afloat and weather a storm. I mean, before a ship even faces an internal emergency, it has to be able to keep the ocean out, right? Just look at the stark language AMSA uses in this section on ventilators and air pipes. The report notes widespread, severe corrosion, wastage, and holes on vital air pipes. We're seeing missing float disks across multiple tank groups, including ballast and freshwater tanks. These systems are specifically meant to prevent water from flooding the ship's internal compartments. But inspectors are finding damaged seals, cracked float disks, and vent heads that are literally crumbling away from severe rust. A ship with holed air pipes is a ship that's taking on water before the storm even hits.
And honestly, it gets worse when we look at the hatchways and covers. These massive steel lids are supposed to seal the cargo holds. But AMSA found severe corrosion of lip plates and guide brackets. The rubber packings, the very things meant to create a watertight seal, are often missing entirely, deeply grooved, or just excessively compressed. But here is the most alarming part. Securing mechanisms like quick-acting cleats are seized up completely. In some cases, inspectors actually found crew members holding down vital access hatches with unapproved temporary ratchet straps. Just imagine facing a massive ocean swell, and the only thing keeping the freezing water out of your ship is a flimsy fabric tie-down strap. It is a massive, massive safety risk.
Moving right along to Section 2, Fire and Power Failures when Internal Systems Break Down. So, the outside of the ship is struggling, right? But what about the inside? When internal systems break down, a vessel quickly transforms from a workplace into a deadly trap. If you can't contain a fire or keep the lights on, a bad situation goes catastrophic in minutes. Take fire dampers. These are essentially massive steel flaps designed to starve a fire of oxygen by sealing off the ventilation. But the report highlights extensive, terrifying failures here. Engine room dampers are defective, seized, or actually have holes rusted right through them. Over in the galley, exhaust flaps are stuck completely open because their retaining channels have just wasted away. Even worse, the physical safety tools the crew needs to manually close these dampers, frequently found deformed or just completely missing. If a fire breaks out, these seized flaps make it literally impossible to isolate the flames. The fire will just keep breathing and spreading.
This slide right here brilliantly illustrates the terrifying gap between expectation and reality. When main power dies on a ship, the emergency generator is expected to automatically start and connect to the emergency switchboard. It is the ultimate failsafe. But what did AMSA actually find? Well, when Spectre simulated blackouts, these generators were shedding their load, throwing abnormal voltage alarms, and completely failing their sequential test operations. Instead of keeping the ship alive, the backup power is just dying right alongside the main engines. And guys, it gets worse. Because beyond the actual mechanical defects, like missing battery covers and broken indicator lights, inspectors are finding that these emergency generators are just being dangerously left in manual mode. That means if a blackout happens at 2 a.m. in pitching seas, the generator isn't going to start automatically. A crew member is going to have to navigate through the pitch black to go manually start it. It fundamentally defeats the entire purpose of an automated emergency system. It isn't even ready for an emergency.
And even if you miraculously have power, you still might be totally out of luck trying to fight a fire. Look at these emergency fire pump failures. AMSA found pumps utterly unable to pressurize the fire main. Why? Well, it turns out that frequently the pump's suction sea chest valve, the part that actually lets the ocean water into the pump, was found shut during testing. To make matters even worse, valve markings were completely incorrect and key crew members were entirely unable to even demonstrate how to operate the system. Imagine a fire raging out of control and the crew is fumbling with incorrectly labeled valves, getting absolutely zero water pressure.
This brings us to Section 3, Failing Life-Saving Appliances, No Way Out. Okay, so the hull is compromised, power is dead, and the fire is spreading. The captain makes the call and gives the order to abandon ship. The crew now has to rely on their absolute last resort. But looking at these lifeboat and rescue boat reports side by side proves that emergency escape systems across the board are heavily compromised. It isn't just one bad boat, it's a total failure of the evacuation ecosystem.
Let's detail these lifeboat horrors for a second. AMSA inspectors found lifeboat engines completely failing to start, or they'd start up and then die shortly after. They found cracks and holes in the lifeboat hulls, compromising their watertight integrity, meaning your lifeboat might literally sink just like your main ship. But the absolute worst part, release hooks are getting stuck and corroding. These are the mechanisms that actually detach the lifeboat from the cables lowering it. If those hooks seize up, the lifeboat gets stuck suspended in midair, or it ends up dragging alongside the sinking ship.
Throw the rescue boat defects into the mix, and it paints a seriously grim picture. Rescue boats are meant for rapid response, like retrieving a man overboard. Yet reports show engines stalling at idle, with vivid descriptions of grinding noises. They've got defective water cooling systems, insufficient fuel on board to actually complete a rescue operation, and cracked buoyant chambers. A rescue boat with no fuel and a grinding, overheating engine is worse than useless. It's a false promise of safety.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, the Systemic Root Cause International Safety Management Failures.
Okay, so we've seen the broken hatches, the seized fire dampers, the dead generators, and the cracked lifeboats. But why is all this happening? We've arrived at the climax of the explainer, revealing the ghost in the machine, the real reason all these disparate mechanical failures are happening together. The crucial point is right here in the text of the AMSA report itself. Collectively, these issues reflect systemic failures in maintenance, inspection routines, and safety management practices. This isn't just a string of bad luck. It's no coincidence that the generator and the lifeboat are broken on the exact same ship. It is a complete breakdown in the human element and the overarching safety management culture of these operating companies.
Let's break down how these systemic nonconformities actually play out on the deck. It means management is straight up ignoring widespread, advanced corrosion until inspectors literally force their hand. It means there are unresolved, recurring defects. Things break, they get tested, they fail again, and nobody bothers to fix them. Worst of all, it results in officers being totally unfamiliar with the starting procedures for critical gear. You can have a perfectly functioning fire pump, but if the management hasn't trained the crew on which valve to open, the ship is still going to burn.
We can see exactly how this looks by jumping back to that emergency fire pump report. Section 5 explicitly calls out ISM-related failures. AMSA officially flags that key crew were unable to demonstrate pump operation and there was no effective verification of pump functionality prior to the inspections. These equipment failures aren't just bad luck. They are the direct, measurable results of crew inability and poor procedural verification.
And that brings this explainer to a powerful thematic close. A seized fire damper, a rusty air pipe, or a cracked lifeboat. These are just the symptoms. The actual disease is a failing safety culture. It's not just broken metal, it is broken management. Because when routine maintenance is treated as optional, the ocean will inevitably, eventually, expose those shortcuts.
I want to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. When the next emergency strikes, when that massive storm hits, or the fire alarm blares in the middle of the night, will your vessel actually be ready? Or is it just a collection of neglected maintenance waiting for a catastrophe? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay safe out there on the water, and please don't forget to maintain your gear.